In this video, we'll be taking a look at 3 college football games happening on September 16, 2023, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games. So 2 picks for each game, 6 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 3 college football games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start. If you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Kansas State versus Missouri. The Kansas State Wildcats will be trying to pick up their first road win of the season when they face the Missouri Tigers on Saturday afternoon. The game will be played at Memorial Stadium Fourot Field. The Wildcats are coming off a 42-13 win over Troy as 15-point favorites. The Tigers are coming off a 23-19 win over Middle Tennessee as 21-point favorites. Kansas State and Missouri split their last 10 meetings. Kansas State and Missouri will put their perfect records to the test on Saturday when the Wildcats travel to Columbia, Missouri for a rematch with the Tigers following Kansas State's 40-12 win on its home soil a season ago. While both programs are 2-0, neither has been tested against teams of an equal level of competition. However, Missouri struggled at home last week against Middle Tennessee State. The Tigers gained just 316 yards and 4.9 yards per play, while their offensive line provided very little rushing room for the running backs. As a team, Missouri accumulated under 2.5 yards per carry, and there was little reliability from the pass catchers outside of Luther Burden on top of it. Kansas State took care of business last week in a 42-13 win over Troy, which has one of the better defenses at the Group of 5 level. Quarterback Will Howard threw for 250 yards and 3 touchdowns while adding 2 more scores with his legs in the victory. The Wildcats no longer have running back Deuce Vaughn, but Howard exudes confidence as a quarterback and can test Missouri's secondary in ways that Adrian Martinez could not last season, which adds a wrinkle to this offense that it did not have in the prior matchup. Furthermore, Kansas State figures to have a decent offensive line advantage, anchored by one of the best linemen in the country in Cooper Beebe, providing more confidence in the Wildcats' offense as a whole in this contest. Missouri's offensive line yielded 4 sacks to Middle Tennessee State last week, and through 2 games, Brady Cook has the second highest pressure-to-sack rate of all Football Bowl subdivision quarterbacks, with at least 10 dropbacks according to Pro Football Focus. In fact, Cook ranks 112 out of 127 qualified quarterbacks in passing grade under pressure, of which I expect Kansas State to generate plenty with the speed of its front 7. That pressure should force Cook into mistakes against a solid secondary led by Jacob Parrish, who has given up just 6 receptions on 16 targets this year. Given last week's performance against Middle Tennessee, I do not trust Missouri's rushing attack to take any pressure off Cook and for the Tigers to struggle to generate a rhythm offensively against the Wildcats. Conversely, I trust Howard and the Kansas State offense to find success against Missouri's defense, a unit that ranks 47th in PFF's pass rush grade and 94th in coverage grade, despite its first 2 matchups being against South Dakota and Middle Tennessee State. Kansas State won their first 2 games convincingly. They played very well offensively and scored more than 40 points in both games. They've had no trouble moving the ball, with the team throwing for more than 300 yards per game and rushing for over 180 yards. Even though the Tigers have played well defensively, their secondary gave up some big plays against an overmatched Blue Raiders team, and they're facing a better passing attack, so expect them to have a hard time slowing down the Wildcats in this game. The Tigers also won their first 2 games, but they barely got past a Middle Tennessee team they were expected to beat by 3 touchdowns. They don't throw the ball well and do a better job keeping the ball on the ground. However, the Wildcats did a great job defending the run in their first 2 games, and their secondary has also been very good. Missouri doesn't have enough depth at the receiver position for me to feel confident should they need to rely on the pass. In addition, the offensive line of the Tigers has given up 5 sacks in 2 games, while the Wildcats have registered 8 sacks in their 2 games. In a battle between the lines, Kansas State's defensive line could be the difference maker. I simply just wasn't a fan of how Missouri looked against a mediocre at best Middle Tennessee team, and maybe Missouri had one eye looking ahead to this game, but I just don't see the Tigers doing enough here. While I do not expect another 28-point blowout victory for the Wildcats, I think they will have their way with the Tigers again despite the venue change. change. While Missouri at home as the underdog is tempting, I'm taking the more talented team, Kansas State. I believe that Kansas State does more than enough to win this one by a touchdown. So the Kansas State Wildcats to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Neither team has given up much on the ground, despite their weaker opponents. However, this leads me to believe that both teams will do their best to put an emphasis on a successful rushing attack. This will help complement the play-action pass and open the game up towards the later stages of the contest. Their emphasis on the run may not be successful during the first few drives or even the first half. The Wildcats averaged 43.5 points per game through their first 2 games. They averaged 31 points per game in their last 3 games against the Tigers. They throw the ball well, and Missouri's defensive weakness so far has been its secondary. Even though the Tigers are giving up 14.5 points per game through 2 games, the Wildcats will score at least 21 points in this game. The Tigers averaged 29 points per game through their first 2 games. They averaged 22 points per game in their last 3 games against the Wildcats. They run the ball well, but the Tigers are holding opponents under 100 rushing yards per game while holding them under 10 points, so don't expect the Tigers to score enough points to push the score past the total. The Tigers and Wildcats played under the total in 4 of their last 5 meetings. Therefore, based on the defensive lines each team boasts, I have confidence that the score will be lower than anticipated. Points will come at a premium in this game, and Missouri was able to score only 23 points against Middle Tennessee in their last game. Under the projected total is our full game total pick. Central Michigan versus Notre Dame. It's Saturday afternoon on the college gridiron, and we will see the Central Michigan Chippewas tangle with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish at Notre Dame Stadium in South Bend, Indiana. The Chippewas are off of a 45-42 home win over football championship subdivision New Hampshire to put them at 1-1 on the year. The Irish are now a perfect 3-0 on the season after topping NC State on the road by a score of 45-24. The Fighting Irish come into this game with a record of 3-0, and they are number 9 in the top 25 AP poll. It has been smooth sailing for the Irish thus far, as they have won their games by an average margin of 38 points per game. They are averaging 48 points per game, while allowing 10 points per game. Transfer quarterback Sam Hartman has already had a great season so far, throwing for 731 passing yards and 10 touchdowns without an interception. Between Hartman and their balanced rushing attack, their offense looks to be one that is hard to stop. The Chippewas come into this game with a record of 1-1. They lost their opener to Michigan State before bouncing back with a close win against New Hampshire. The fact that they beat New Hampshire by just 3 points is concerning. The Chippewas are averaging 26 points per game, but they are allowing an average of 36.5 points per game. The Central Michigan Chippewas had major issues against Michigan State in their season opener, and Notre Dame is several times better. This one could be tricky as the Irish have a monster game against Ohio State on deck. Still, the Irish took their eye off the ball twice last year as huge favorites, and they lost those games outright, which cost them a shot at the playoffs. Notre Dame will not let that happen here, so they will try to be fully focused on this one. I can also see Sam Hartman not taking his foot off the gas as he continues to gel with his receiving core. It is also important to note that Hartman will be facing the worst passing defense in the nation. He will try to have a huge day. The defense will also try to have a big day against a Central Michigan offense that is 122nd in the nation in passing. The line is what it is for a reason, folks. With that said, this is a massive line and just the 5th time since 2019 Notre Dame has been favorites of 30 or more points. It's also a trap game for the Irish after a big road game against NC State last week and Ohio State on deck next week. Not only a look ahead, but just how motivated will Notre Dame be to lay the wood? I expect the Irish to get up early and cruise with potential starters coming out because next week is a game with serious playoff implications. That could lead to a backdoor cover. I typically never buy the hype with Notre Dame, so the Central Michigan Chippewas to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. I'm expecting a masterclass performance from Notre Dame on Saturday. There's no reason that they shouldn't put up north of 40 points themselves. Now, the big question is whether or not the Chippewas will be able to contribute to the total at all. They were limited to just 7 points against a mediocre Michigan State team in Week 1, but they bounced back with 45 points against New Hampshire last weekend. If they can put a few scoring drives together, we should see this one go over quite easily. However, if not, we have an unreliable Bert Emanuel Jr. running the offense. He has already thrown 3 interceptions over 2 games. If the turnover woes continue on Saturday, Notre Dame will be set up with short fields and have plenty of scoring opportunities. Over the projected total is our full game total pick. Alabama versus South Florida. The 10th-ranked Alabama Crimson Tide and Nick Saban prepare to host the University of South Florida Bulls. With both teams slumping a 1-1 record, this matchup follows Alabama, fresh off a high-profile showdown against Texas that had the nation on the edge of its seat as they seek redemption on the road in Tampa, while the South Florida Bulls look to bounce back from a tough loss to Western Kentucky. The Crimson Tide figures to be fighting mad after losing 34-24 last weekend at home against the Texas Longhorns. Facing an angry Alabama team after a rare loss, especially in September, is not a place you want to be. Turbos. Alabama has rolled up 40 points per game, including a 56-7 pounding of Middle Tennessee in the opener in Tuscaloosa, covering a 39-point spread. The defense was a little suspect against the Longhorns, and quarterback Jalen Milroe is taking some heat after some miscues in his first real true big game. But that's a little bit unfair. Such is life in Alabama, and in the Southeastern Conference, however. The Bulls are hot garbage though, and it's a great place for Alabama to bounce back. South Florida was paddled 41-24 in the home opener against Western Kentucky, failing to cover as a 13-point underdog at the Ray J, and South Florida bounced back with a 38-24 win over the Florida Aggies of the football championship subdivision last week, although again it failed to cover as a 20.5-point favorite. The points and yardage allowed against the Rattlers was alarming, as the football championship subdivision school outgained the Bulls 393-342 in total yards, and it was only because the Aggies coughed it up 5 times, including 2 fumbles lost and 3 interceptions, that South Florida won. If not, we could be talking about an upset and an 0-2 South Florida team. Alabama should be able to work through South Florida's defense like a hot knife through butter. Milroe will find opportunities for home run plays in the passing game as well. South Florida won't be able to get into the backfield often enough to put pressure on the quarterback or slow down the Tide's ground game, leaving the secondary vulnerable to big plays through the air. Alabama's defense will be locked in for this game after its poor performance against Texas. The coaching staff is familiar with Golish's offense from his record-breaking season as the offensive coordinator at Tennessee. They will have the Tide prepared to limit the Bulls' rushing attack, making their offense even more one-dimensional than it was in the first 2 games. Alabama might not be a college football playoff contender, but its talent level hasn't dropped off that much. The Crimson Tide will obliterate the Bulls on Saturday, gashing the South Florida defense for over 250 rushing yards with little resistance. Is this one of the less exciting Alabama teams in recent memory? Perhaps, but that doesn't mean they're not talented, and I have to think that Nick Saban drilled his guys in practice all week after that frustrating loss to Texas. South Florida has some nice pieces to maybe compete for a bowl bid this season, but for this game, I think the Bulls are just in the wrong place at the wrong time. So the Alabama Crimson Tide to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Firstly, examining last season's data, the under was a notable trend in South Florida's non-conference games, with a 3-2-1 record. This suggests that when facing unfamiliar opponents, South Florida often engages in lower-scoring affairs. Additionally, considering Alabama's historical performance, the under has been a dominant trend after a loss under Nick Saban's tenure since 2007, boasting a 16-4 record. This indicates that when coming off a defeat, the Crimson Tide tend to tighten up their defensive efforts and play more conservatively on offense, resulting in lower-scoring contests. Alabama should have plenty of success on the ground, and Milroe will have some big plays through the air, but I expect the Tide to move the football methodically on Saturday. This game doesn't mean much to the visitors, and while I don't doubt they'll be locked in to win, I doubt they'll continue to run up the score with their starters in the game. South Florida's offense is too dependent on the ground game with a freshman quarterback under center. Most of the talent on South Florida's roster that transferred was on the offensive side as well. There's no denying that Golish's offensive system is challenging to defend, but it will take time for South Florida to be successful. The Alabama defense won't let the Bulls score more than 14 points in this game. With these factors in mind, betting a low-scoring affair in this one appears to be a strategically sound decision, as I'm anticipating a game with fewer points than the total suggests. Under the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed. Subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.